Welcome to week 7 of the Nursing Leadership and Management course. The lecture for this week will focus on topics related to personnel development. We will discuss collective action, role transition, career development, professional development, and the future. Before we start the lecture for this week, please take a moment to review the objectives for this lecture. Collective action means working together to achieve something. That something may be patient care. Organizing a group of providers to ensure a seamless transition is one example of collective action. That something may focus on the workplace. Having a group sign a petition to support a manager is another example of collective action, as is committing to work together to cover colleagues' illness. Collective action can also mean organizing for the purposes of collective bargaining. While the purpose may differ, the desire and skill of working together is comparable across situations. While there are many reasons for which people work collectively, we are going to focus on three common ones found in employment setting where nurses work. They are shared governance, workplace advocacy, and collective bargaining. Shared governance doesn't just expect participation, it demands it. When the idea of shared governance is instituted in an organization, it requires that all change the way decisions are made. While staff nurses may have to assume new roles in providing input for decisions, those nurses who previously made the decisions also have to change. They must now deliberately seek the input of staff. So, both manager and follower roles have changed. Tim Porter O'Grady says that shared governance is democratic, dynamic, and had a shared decision-making and accountability. When shared governance is first implemented, it was not uncommon to find that there is a committee or two that are charged with specific tasks. As the organization gains experience, these committee structures spread throughout the organization. Getting to better decisions often is one of the outcomes. Because more diversity is included upfront, more ideas are tested before a decision is made. Again, because there is evolving support for speaking up and offering ideas, more people risk participating and offering ideas. Those ideas may be about issues presented from management, but they eventually evolve into self-generated ideas. Workplace advocacy describes what we do in advocating for ourselves and our peers. This advocacy process can be supportive when management and staff both agree on key concepts. It can also be contentious when the basic concepts are not agreed to. For example, if both management and staff agree that there needs to be a career ladder, both work towards this end. And perhaps only minor disagreements may occur over specific dollar amounts or how the benefits is accessed. If, however, both groups don't agree, then the focus of the conversation is on the core concept. Although some mutual understanding may be reached, there may be discord within the sitting because one side or the other thinks something was forced on them. When everyone is alert to workplace issues such as handling patients, workplaces that are free from abusive behavior, safe transportation to and from parking facilities, and clear support for professionals speaking up for their patients, workplace advocacy can be a positive experience. Nurse managers can support nursing advances with workplace advocacy strategies by having individuals participate in direct conversations about the issues. In other words, support two people with disagreements talking with each other rather than through you. Some nurses have full access to the internet. In some settings, however, nurses can only access the internet through specific and often remote computers. In other settings, if nurses want to validate recent research on a topic, they must seek consistent assistance from someone such as a manager or educator. Clearly, this approach does not support knowledge-based decision-making. When nurses attempt to resolve this issue, they are using workplace advocacy strategies. Alternative dispute resolution has taken on new meanings in healthcare because it is a formalized process that occurs in situations where no collective bargaining agreement exists. There are 4 common strategies used within this construct. Negotiation, which may be accomplished between 2 parties in dispute. Someone may help define clear ground rules and the expected outcome, but the way in which the individual reach agreement is theirs to decide. Facilitation involves the presence of a third party. This person may simply reflect what is being said and raise questions such as, does that fit with what you think? What could you live with in this situation? How does that strike you? This person often starts the conversation and sets the ground rules for how the process will proceed. Mediation is an informal process in which a neutral third party assists the opposing parties to reach a voluntary negotiated resolution of a charge of discrimination. It gives the parties the opportunity to discuss the issues raised in the charge, clear up misunderstanding, determine the underlying interests or concerns, find areas of agreement, and ultimately incorporate those areas of agreements into resolutions. A mediator does not resolve the charge or impose a decision on the parties. Instead, the mediator helps the parties to agree on a mutually accepted resolution. It is a confidential process limited to the individuals involved. And finally, the final alternative dispute resolution is arbitration. Arbitration is a formal process where the person serving as the arbitrator makes the decision. The decision is binding on both parties. Because it is used as the last stage in the alternative dispute resolution process, it usually means that clear distinction in positions have prevented any conclusion about how to move forward. As a result, there may be more difficult emotions associated with this process. Collective bargaining is a formal process where employees select a bargaining agent to represent their interests. It begins with the election of a union or group to represent the employees in a class, such as registered nurses or groups up to and including all non-management employees within an organization. Collective action. These strategies can coexist in any given setting. Differences about how to approach collective action exist geographically, philosophically, and certainly by type of facility. Be informed and proactive about working together on issues of importance to nursing. In this part of the lecture, you'll learn about role transitioning from staff nurse to being a manager. One of the things we can do to better prepare for the future is to understand the roles of nurse managers, whether we intend to be one or not. Knowing what they go through as they transition to a leadership role and how others can be supportive helps all of us function in more collegial ways. We are going to focus on 3 aspects about roles of nursing managers and how they transition. What you are going to learn is why the acronym roles is important, how role transition occur, and how you can help yourself and others make transition. Organizations play a key role in assisting employees through role transition. Ewens indicates that role stress can occur when a workplace does not provide the scope and flexibility for integrating often new identities. Changes in role can be either painful or exciting and depending largely on the work culture and support provided. At work, we can plan for most transitions, but there are exceptions. The chief nurse officer is suddenly terminated, a nurse manager becomes terminally ill, or a business transition for a spouse causes a staff member to leave. The key point is to be supportive. Big social transitions are usually accompanied with some support in society. Even a change in job usually involves some farewell parties. Marking the transition, most people don't want to talk about job loss, and that unless you are moving up at the next employment setting. Many places welcome new people with a bunch of rules and regulations. What transition markers occur when you're getting engaged, married, having a baby, or divorced, or lose a job, or graduate from school, or move from one employer to another. In the next topic, we will talk about intertwining role of the role transition, leading, following, and managing. Like a piece of rope where there is no single strand, the roles of leading, following, and managing are intertwined. This is especially true for the manager. The transition from a staff nurse role to a nurse manager leader role can occur overnight. So it is important to think about how roles fit together and how managers differ from followers. If you think about the acronym that was in your textbook, the roles, you can recall the key components of roles you may assume throughout your career. Responsibilities. Each position has specific tasks for which the position holder is responsible. In a well-designed organizations, differentiation between and among positions is clear. In other words, when comparing position descriptions, it is possible to tell who is responsible for what. Opportunities. Possibilities represent opportunities for a manager to influence organizational and unit goals. Organizations often offer incentives for creativity that help make a difference in workplace. Lines of communication will be discussed in the next slide. Expectations. Clear expectations equals less role confusion. Being clear about your own expectations is really important. Additionally, you need to consider the expectations of others, your boss, your peers, and your staff. Each of those probably has a different set of expectations. If you are clear about your own, you can help others frame their expectations in reference to yours. Otherwise, you are responding to multiple and not necessarily compatible sources of input. And finally, support, which will be discussed in a few minutes. Lines of communication. The L in roles is a critical one. It represents lines of communication. While the manager may have many informal lines of communication, there are some that are very structured and formal. These include the up and down within the nursing division and the across with other disciplines and departments. Being able to listen and to speak clearly and intelligently are critical for success. Support. The S stands for support. Support may mean the difference between success and failure. Support derives from family and friends too. However, we can only control or influence what happens in the workplace. Setting up formal expectations for support helps transition activities. Making a smooth transition to the next role you assume depends on your personal strengths and abilities and on capitalizing on the strengths and resources of the organization. Although there are some common strategies to make a transition, there are some strategies that are unique to good transition and bad ones. See in the slide. When the transitions are good, it's always wise to praise the predecessors. Theoretically, this is a person who was admired and valued. Capitalizing on this to let that person know you know and to let the team know how smart they were to have had this predecessor in place. Celebrate the person's accomplishments and be public about it. When transitions are not so positive, it is easy to get pulled into demeaning the prior person. Obviously, that is totally unwise. If for no other reasons that it creates staff distrust when they think they could be the next ones demeaned. It is equally important not to cover up. Rather than dwell on what didn't work in the past, the most useful strategy is to focus on the future and what will happen immediately to change the situation. Because the team may feel conflicted about loyalties or trust, one of the first steps should be to create the team. It is also important to think about whether you should be silent about the past, apologize that it happened, or simply move on. Those decisions flow from the particular situations themselves. There are 4 key strategies to promote success. The first one is personal and the last 3 are organizational. Your personal strengths really come into play when you are making transitions. Knowing your personal strengths, being clear about why you are committed to a particular role, using your personal character, maintaining your self-respect, and being flexible are what you have no matter what system you are in. Using these strengths during transitions help to keep you focused on the work to be done. In some cases, you may want to negotiate the role. For example, based on the personal needs, you may choose to vary the hours that you prefer to work from traditional hours in an organization. In so doing, you might discuss how you could modify some role expectations so that this factor provides added value to the organization. Having a mentor, a sponsor, or a coach can also be productive. Sometimes with those types of skills can help you develop your skills and link you with others who can provide further support. Finally, through formal degree granting opportunities or through informal workshops or conferences, the latest thinking about management, development, and success strategies can be accessed. In this part of the lecture, we will be discussing career management and putting yourself in charge. No matter how well prepared you feel today, let me assure you that there are numerous changes to come. Although there is much more to learn about this content, we will focus on 3 objectives: analyzing person position fit, evaluate the relevance of cover letter, curriculum vitae, and resume as entries to interview, and analyzing critical elements of an interview. Whether you are looking at your first position in nursing or even your first real position in the world of work, or this is your 5th or 15th, Whenever you consider a position, you need to think about the position and how you would fit within it. Many organizations expect the majority of the adaptation to be on the part of the employee. So you have to ask yourself a series of questions about how a particular position contributes to your overall goals, how the position is structured that meets personal needs, what benefits offsets any downsides, and so forth. Some organizations also believe they can adapt their positions to fit the person they want to execute the work. In those organizations, they may support job share programs, they may be able to adapt the hours of work, or they may be able to reassign some portion of the position to another position, or reassign some aspects of another position to the one you are considering. To get to this clarity about what the position does for you and what you can do for it, you have to consider the position and your fit within it. Remember that no one will offer to change anything unless you can clearly articulate why it is important. Applying for a position takes a lot of upfront work. Going online to check an organization's website doesn't just tell you what positions are available. You can read the mission statement, you can learn about some of their new initiatives, and you can gain a sense of how the organization interacts with the community to which it provides services. Newspapers and journals also offer listings of positions, but word of mouth from people you know and trust is often invaluable. Before you get to the point of looking, however, it is really helpful to have in mind what you want to say in a cover letter and a resume so that you can respond in a timely manner with relevant information. The key is getting your data together, create a system, use the system, and add to the system. The point is that the system is only as good as you make it. It supports everything else you want to do, so it is an investment in your career. Use what the prospective employers say to use. If there's no direction, determine whether you are trying to impress with quantity, using your CV, or quality, using your resume. When in doubt, use the resume and tailor it to the position. Use cover letters to emphasize your best strengths, provide an example about an ability, illustrate diversity of interests and abilities, and add to information that is in the resume or curriculum vitae. Cover letters serve several purposes. The point of the cover letter is to reconfirm the position for which you are applying and the date and time of an interview if such is known. Using it as a marketing device to achieve one of the purposes on the screen achieved greater results than a resume alone. You may be asked to email your resume or curriculum vitae, in which case use the email as you would a cover letter. And don't forget to spell check. All those documents do is open a door for you to an interview. This is where you really have the opportunity to sell yourself. Some of the critical elements of an interview include being prepared, practicing questions, selecting words, evaluating messages. Interviewing is a two-way proposition. You want to learn as much about the prospective employer as they learn about you. Go in prepared to learn about a lot. Going to an interview prepared with questions means that you learned about this organization and position ahead of time. Be sure you know their terms so that you can see clarity about various values and beliefs using their words. Consider words as carefully as you do the type of answers to provide. Use both verbal and nonverbal communication to receive the messages the interviewer is sending. Assume that the interviewer is on his or her best behavior, so be sure to feel how the interview is going. If, for example, you feel rushed, you may feel this way once you are an employee and are seeking help. In this part of the lecture, we'll discuss leading through professional association. What's next? Remember, a profession is only as strong as the support its members give it. Generally, there are 5 types of professional associations. We are all eligible to join the American Nurse Association, ANA. It is a broadly focused association. Some nurses early in their careers join a specialty association. These associations typically deal with issues surrounding the clinical areas or patients' population served. A third type of association is the role-focused one. The American Organization of Nurse Executives, for example, serve nurses from multiple clinical specialties who hold management positions. The fourth type is the honor association, such as Sigma Theta Tau International, where certain standards must be met to be invited to join. The last type is a specific focus association. This might be gender or ethnicity based, or it might be an alum association. There are multiple ways that you can support the profession. Belonging is important because the association can say it speaks for more people. Additionally, the dues help support the work. Next, it is possible that you could engage in some activities, make calls, set up an email exchange, attend a meeting, serve on a committee, usually entailing a bigger commitment. Finally, running for office can get you elected. From there, numerous opportunities emerge. Here are some of the benefits you can derive from belonging to an association. What you get depends on what you are seeking. Letting others know what you are looking for is important. Can you think of other benefits? What you risk when you belong to an association. Expectations for input, financial obligation for member dues, expectations to attend meetings and conferences. Each of us consider membership from some perspective. The key is to determine what belonging is worth to you. These are 3 of the questions you could ask yourself. What is my right to being a registered nurse worth? How much time would it take me to collect information about legislations and practices and then act on that knowledge? How much are the dues of the association I wish to join? What prevents nurses from joining? You may already have listings of associations. For example, your textbook lists some websites for associations. If an organization has a journal or a newsletter, the contact information is typically listed on that journal. The choice is yours. How will you help your profession to help you? What's holding you from joining an association? And finally, last topic for this week is thriving for a future. In today's society, many employers are not looking merely at filling a vacant position, although that is a primary driving factor. They also are looking at the future contributions a person can make in a current or other positions. This is true of nursing employers too. The most treasured skill is leadership. Nurse administrators that say that the characteristic they most seek in new graduates and others is that of leadership. Numerous ways exist to look at leadership, and we are going to look at a set of strengths necessary for the future. Lipman Blumen suggests that there are 6 leadership strengths needed for the future, illustrated in this slide. The first is to be ethically and politically savvy. This means that we don't threaten people to change, we inspire them toward the vision of what might be. It requires us to use our influence individually and as a profession for the betterment of healthcare and the patients we serve. The second strength is authenticity and accountability. As we try to make healthcare a blame-free environment, we all must speak up when we err and support others when they do so. This aspect might even involve whistleblowing when decisions are ill-advised ones. Group commitment means that you don't separate yourself from the group in order to gain for yourself only. The third strength, politics of commonalities, means that you act on the idea of inclusion rather than exclusion. As a result, one group cannot be the sole winner. Every group has to derive some benefits from being engaged in the work. The fourth strength, and one to which we will return shortly, is thinking long-term, acting short-term. In addition to understanding where the group is headed, it requires that we actively think about the future. In other words, preparing someone to deal with today's problem is insufficient. We have to understand that the future might be like and develop ourselves in a manner to be effective tomorrow. This strength also suggests that we share what we know with others so that they can thrive after we leave a position, an organization, or a profession. Leadership through expectations is the fifth strength. Think of this in terms of describing the destination rather than the journey. If asked, you can tell someone how to make the journey, but the real goal is not to be the back seat driver. Setting or sharing expectations allow us to influence others without limiting their potential for development. Finally, the quest for meaning is to leave a legacy. That doesn't mean a monetary legacy, although that is nice. Legacy means that others behind you in the profession will benefit because you shared your insight into patient care, the profession, policy development, and life in general. The key to all of these strengths is this. Remaining employable over a career requires us to think about what the future will be like and how nursing and nurses, and specifically each one of us can fit in. We have to consider the forecasts that professionals suggest are the likely future. We are not merely employed, we are employable. Let's look first at knowledge. If you love computers and nursing, the field of nursing informatics has great potential to create the knowledge that we will need instantly in many healthcare settings. We already are seeing the growing industry of healthcare in Thailand and India, where numerous procedures are performed for a fraction of what it's cost in the United States. In many cases, these physicians and nurses were educated in the United States. They see U.S. patients, provide immediate support, and in some cases are connected with U.S. services for further care. Healthcare and how it's delivered and financed have evolved over the last several decades, and more change is needed in the future. Think of the possibilities that nurses have in multiple settings. Think about technology. Performing gallbladder or heart surgery used to be dramatic. Now, through microsurgery, many people experience minimal incisions, less pain, and fewer hospital days, and less chances for infection than in prior, more invasive surgeries. Because the world is more global, there is a greater diversity in age, ethnicity, and culture practices. This means that we must be even more flexible in future than we are now. Part of the reasons that the healthcare services in Thailand and India have been so popular is due to the emphasis on the experience. Transitioning to a spa before returning home is a standard experience for some surgical interventions. We are and will be living in an age of dichotomies: violence versus civility, large versus small, job versus careers. This will be the way to think about life. Because we will all be so busy, we will want information and products delivered to us that are geared to our unique needs. Some forecasters predict that as much as 1/3 of our work life will be focused on the retooling for the next wave of whatever our work will be. We also know that the market for dealing with chronic disease is huge. A focus on prevention will redirect a lot of the work nurses do. We will be functioning in teams, and as the Institute of Medicine suggests in 2003, we need to be an interdisciplinary team when we do it. Most of all, however, we will all be expected to be leaders. That means that we need to be ready when we need to assume this role and to be effective followers when we are not leading a group.